Hi there, I'm Dick Miller, and our Senator Jeff Smith is sitting across from me again this month, and we're going to try to discuss some of the issues of the day, if there are any. And the first question I'll ask him is something we discussed a little bit earlier, and that is, what's going on in the Senate?
Well, what's going on in the Senate? Your guess is as good as mine. We do have politics being played out there. One thing I will say is that people, this is related. People will say to me after you get elected, "Do you move down there?" Or they'll make some reference to, if you ever come back home, I'd like to talk to you. Well, the fact is, I was telling Dick before we came on air, and why Dick might have asked this question, is that this is the time of year, especially when, first of all, even when we are busy, I'm never down there more than 3 days in a week. But right now, I don't go down there at all unless we are actually called to the floor for something urgent, or there is a committee hearing that we do in person that there's a necessity for me to be there. But my necessity is to be here in the district. This is where I get opportunity to talk to people, hear from people in person. I do some stop and talk with my truck. I try to attend things as I can. Of course, it's gotten wishy-washy again with the pandemic still not going away, but it's been several weeks between my trips down to Madison. So when you ask the question, what's happening in Madison, I have to call my office and ask them what's happening in Madison. But we see in the news, of course, again, politics that are being played still about money being thrown at, investigating an election that was getting to be over a year old
And certified.
and every clerk. I'm sorry, I have to visit that for a minute, because I get emails every day on that still. This can't stand. And where do they get their information? From a guy named Mike Liddell. Is that his name? Lindell?
He's
the pillow guy.
The pillow guy, yeah.
Who has a video that all these people have watched. And in that video, he uses Clark County in Wisconsin as an example, and I think Adams County too is one of in Wisconsin as his examples around the country. In Adams County, I think it's something like 20,000 votes were flipped from Trump to Biden for him to win. Well, they only have 17,000 voters registered in Adams County. In similar story, but even more detailed, is that Clark County, the numbers that I do know, is that he says 24,000 votes were flipped. And yet, again, the actual number of voters in Clark County were about 15,000 in 2020, total, between the two candidates. And Trump had 10,300, something like that, versus Biden had 4,100 or something. I don't really know the exact number, but it's 4,000 and some and 10,000 and some. And the clerk, by the way, one last thing, says they are not online. And this video says that the Chinese hacked them and flipped those votes. My point of telling people this is, please, careful who you're listening to, and check out the sources and talk to the clerks. This is a Republican clerk in a Republican-leaning county who's telling you, look, I know clerks. Clerks really take this seriously. It is their primary job is to be sure that our elections are done properly and our votes are protected and democracy is safe. That's so important to them, and I know they're professionals at it.
So you keep responding the best you can, and,
Well,
and politely, I'm sure.
There's some of that we just you know, it comes to a point where we just take them in and we don't even respond anymore. I don't know what else to tell people.
Yeah.
They don't want to. They don't want to know that.
Yeah, these are so obviously mistaken in their comments.
Misled. They're
yeah.
being misled.
Well, and as you well know, this Lindell is under he's being sued for I think billions of dollars
Yeah.
for his slander and misinformation regarding the integrity of the voting machine, the
Yeah.
voting equipment.
Yeah.
And so he could have some real serious problems coming
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
And I know how it is. I've lost elections. I know how it is. It hurts.
Yeah.
And but you just don't go off the rails and try to destroy our process and people's reputations because you didn't win.
Well, I think that really ties into what I was saying earlier, and I think I probably said it many times, and I know I'm sure you have, that when we, in my fantasy thinking, that there was a point in time when legislators on both sides of the fence, so to speak, or aisle, weighed the benefits of proposed legislation from both sides, and decided whether what to do with it. Is it worthy of passing? And it seems like today, here in the state of Wisconsin, probably all over the country, if it's not proposed by the power party,
Yeah.
it doesn't stand a chance. Just like you've said many times, your bills don't get to hearing.
Yeah. So all of this is tied together. I mean, we are in a wounded democracy, and what I talked about the election and what you're talking about after the election, how we behave, is not right. And I can tell you, because I've served previously, where we did have opportunity to work together and accepted amendments to someone to a bill from the other side of the aisle, or vice versa, and not often enough, I admit, but right now it's never.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to being able to talk to each other. And when I first got into politics, one of the things that has always stuck with me is that that a bill was acceptable when no one was happy when it passed, meaning that it was amended and didn't end up being exactly the way the original author expected it to be, but on the other hand, everybody got something, some input into it, and it's never going to be 100% the way one person wanted it to be.
Well, and I think this idealism that I was suggesting, and that what you're talking about, where you come together to work through issues and come up with maybe a better bill, at least more acceptable bill by everybody. Maybe that's our idealism, but I think it should be an idealism held by both parties, not one or the other. And at times, I think you go back to the 80s and 90s. If we had some of the people in the room who served then, they would say they don't know what's going on. It's nothing compared to how it was back in that time.
I give you an example of our current president of the Board of Regents, Tommy Thompson.
Yeah.
He was a governor throughout the 90s and served in the George Bush administration after that. And now he is being attacked by the Republicans in the legislature because they want to control the UW system, who all the universities, campuses want to do is individually be able to determine safety measures for COVID. And I give Tommy Thompson credit. He said, "The heck with the legislature. We're not going to be begging them to be able to protect our students and staff."
Well, and I think this is what they're saying.
But he's being attacked for that.
And this is what they're saying, and the school boards are saying down in the state of Florida, that you have to decentralize to deal with some issues. It can't be just one.
It's things
Yeah.
like this. This is a great example of what's happening right now with the pandemic. It's first of all, it's affecting us worldwide, nationally, statewide, but each community it might be affecting differently. And if you want to, and all of us like to say when we get to a campaign that we really believe in local control. I can tell you, as someone who came from town government, I really do believe in, and we could talk about town government, by the way, as the most democratic government system that there is. But that's not local control when you have legislators passing edicts on the university system, on local school districts, on communities, saying they can't make decisions to protect their community. So that said, I mean, what's going on? What's going to happen going forward in the state legislature? So we're moving into the second half of the session, and what's going to be the first half of this session, of course, was budget time, and a budget has been approved and signed, and now we're into following a census and redistricting. That, I assure you, is going to take up a lot of the ink in the newspapers moving forward, as you've already seen also lawsuits already filed before we've even seen any maps from both sides of the aisle. So it's going to be a very interesting next 6 months at least it's going to be.
And since we have a legislature controlled by the Republicans, the governor supported by his Democrat, that they're going to have to work together in order to get something completed.
Well, that's supposed to be the plan, right? And this is such an important piece of everything we talk about. If we don't have maps drawn by independent persons or commission that the legislature approves and the governor signs, which is what usually happens because it usually ends up going to courts and courts end up doing it and they're independent from the legislature. And if we have what happened 10 years ago instead, we're going to again have it gerrymandered. You have a legislature that doesn't really listen to the constituency. The only power is the speaker of the assembly and the majority leader in the Senate, and you don't matter to them if you don't have fair maps. That they have to come back and answer to you. That's why that is so important.
So let's
fair maps.
Let's hope fair maps
prevail.
Prevail. That's for sure. You already mentioned COVID. In the Whitehall Times in the last 2 weeks maybe, there's been a little discussion about what to do with the money that's come into the county, and so they've had some discussions, and it sounds like there are a lot of different opinions on how best to spend it, and I think in some cases they have to spend it, and they do have, I think, some the feds have come down with some requirements in terms of that spending. Now I know the state of Wisconsin, like most states, probably received a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
And can you tell us something about
I think I have
that
some numbers
and what the state is looking at?
Right. So what Congress did was in passage of this was give the administration of each state, which is the governor's office, the power to actually determine how the money is distributed, for the most part. And so, in our case, we can thank our Congress, our president, and our governor for, taking this seriously. Because this is about bouncing back from something no one could have predicted was going to happen on a national scale. It's sort of like the Depression 100 years ago. Now it's, or 90 years ago. Now it's this. It's a pandemic. So So far, Governor Evers, out of that money, has invested $4.5 billion in relief efforts for infrastructure, tourism, workforce, and of course other key areas for economic recovery. We like to think that so far it's delivering to Main Street. Small business has been his real
The recipient probably.
real target here, because 200 million. This is just a example or sampling of where that money was sent. So $200 million for infrastructure projects, including broadband. That we've talked about that a lot. 650 million for grants to small businesses. Just keep their doors open, keep the people paid and on their payroll. 101 million for tourism sector recovery. And we know how important tourism is to the state of Wisconsin, because we all know who live here what a beautiful state we have and what an attraction it is for us, for people to come here. 130 million for workforce initiatives, again, to affect the payrolls and keep people feeding their families. 510 million for economic well-being and healthy recovery programs. And then bottom line at the end, even before the pandemic, Governor Evers showed that he is investing in our farms, but he has definitely put for his best foot forward for our farmers who have struggled. If they're, for the most part, farmers are independent businesses, and so just this past month, the governor announced an additional $50 million just for a round for the Wisconsin Farm Support Program to make direct payments available to support our Wisconsin's family farms. So we feel like these are good investments in the right places to get that economy rebounding for us.
Now, interesting that, and I guess I hadn't been aware of this, and it makes sense that the governor would be the primary in terms of
that's what we elect
deciding where this money goes. I kind of wonder how the party in power looks upon that sort of thing.
Not well. They did try to, and they did pass through the legislature. I voted against it. Legislation to take that power away from the governor. I don't know how many times we have to keep reminding people that in December of 2018, before the governor was sworn into office, they took a lot of power away from him. Even then, that's, by the way, what politics is all about, is power, greedy power. And so they tried to do that. The governor vetoed that, of course, because he could now, and is continuing to do his job. He's got to do his job, and we think it's working, Dick. You can tell by the fact that comparing 2021 up till this point to 2020 at this point, we've seen an 18% growth already compared to 2020. Even though the pandemic isn't completely gone, but we've been able to learn a lot from 2020 and plus make these investments and grow our economy. And we're practically at the same level of unemployment as we were pre-pandemic.
So when you say grow the economy, that's probably mostly based on not only production but income tax collections, doesn't it?
That's right. It's our. So, for instance, we have a bureau who tracks money coming in and going out, and making sure we're on track with the budget we passed. And they had predicted we would have a $4.3 billion surplus at the end of this next budget, if we continued the way we're going. Now they've come out and added another 300 and some $million to that figure. Yeah. So things are going in the right direction.
Well, and some of it has to be from the fact that hourly wages in some industries have gone up out of necessity to get employees. In fact, you look around the area and you still see a lot of help wanted signs.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of competition for that employee out there. And that is, of course, going to, the state's going to reap that benefit to some
Right.
degree.
It generates spending.
Yeah.
Right? Who
Yeah,
spends? I mean, Henry Ford taught us all a lesson, 100 years or more ago, when he made his cars affordable for his employees and then paid them enough so they could buy his car.
A living wage, so
Yeah.
they could,
And demonstrated that's how it works.
Yeah. So the state is collecting more sales tax, it's collecting more income tax, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
and to think of what, over $4 billion extra money that hasn't been budgeted, which that's amazing. And I think if indeed on the federal level the legislation passes to do more with infrastructure, we're going to see a lot more money
Yes.
that'll come in for that purpose.
We really are. Put people to work.
Yeah, and good jobs, and long-term jobs probably. You know,
Yeah.
if we're talking about rebuilding sewer systems, water systems, highways, this is going to go on for, well, 10, 12 years anyway, I would think.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope we keep it here. I hope we, in our country, in our state, let's spend our money here. Let's build America.
Yeah. I'm trying to come up with a good transition here. and I was so involved with listening to what you had to say here. And this again ties in with COVID to some degree, because I know you've received phone calls from your constituents, probably from time to time, looking for help during this COVID time. And but your constituency is contacting you regularly, even without COVID.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what our office is about. So even though we are in a sort of stagnant period for the legislators, our office is there every day. So I have a team in my office every day, as does every legislator, and we get calls from people, and we should get calls. And in fact, if you didn't know you should be calling our office, do that. If you have an issue with your unemployment, you have an issue with an adoption, with whatever it may be, where you do come across a chance where you need to interact with the state or a state agency, we can help you through that if you have difficulties. Or, that's why I like to be in person as much as possible on the street. If people seriously have come up to me and given me great ideas on legislation because of their life experience, because of their interaction with something where we need a law to make it happen because they're not unable to do something because of some antiquated system we have in place or something. So having contact either by email, by phone, or when you see me in person is how we get things done. And that's what we're there for, though. We are a service, in a sense. Your state legislators, Senate and Assembly, are a service agency. We're there for you.
Well, I shared this with you, I think maybe a few months ago, that where I had when I was serving on the county board, there was a law that really made it hard to properly advertise for an employee, that it was laid out, you had to fill the position in 30 days. Well, that's not enough time to searching for qualified candidates. And that was during a transition from one senator to another. This was before your time. And the word was passed from the senator who lost his position to the one who got the position, a Democrat and a Republican. And I got a call a month or two afterwards saying, we understand there's this issue. Well, what happened? I explained it to him. He put together some legislation and it passed. And it gave the counties throughout the state several more months to properly fill a very important job within the county government.
Yeah.
And so it can work.
Well, yeah.
If people want to take advantage of it.
It's like anything else. We're just people too, and we're not aware of things that you may be aware of.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to bring it to our attention, and we can, didn't, it didn't, it isn't something that comes by every day, and we can see what we can do.
Yeah. Well, I think the complexity of government it's such a huge government, and dealing with millions of people, it is complex. So if you have something, share it with our senator here. Jeff wants to know, and he wants to help, and his office is a facilitator.
I want to be busy.
Yeah, and I know I dealt with one of the staff frequently, and I know that they're there to facilitate certain things and to provide you with information and get you to the right people if they possibly can. So I thank them for that. I just wanted to touch. We've got a couple minutes left. You want to respond to the fact that Congressman Kind is retiring?
Yeah, we'll miss him. 26 years.
I think he represents your city, doesn't it?
He does, yep. Our whole district. Yep. So big shoes to fill for someone who's got that sort of experience and has been representing us for so long. And I know a lot of people have this other thing about, too long. But, he's relatively a young man. I think he's 56 or 57 or 58, somewhere in there. But
yeah, he came in fairly young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's any job at all, and you have to replace experience like that, it's a challenge.
Plus
right?
Seniority.
Yeah.
Seniority maybe counts for more than what we think it should, but it does make a difference. You look at Senator Grassley out of Iowa, where I originally came from. I think he's senior in the U.S. Senate, and he has terrific power, and he's a very elderly gentleman.
Yeah, it was like Dave Obey in the day, right?
Absolutely.
Dave Obey was very powerful in Congress by the time he left.
It makes a difference.
So we're all keeping the door open for whomever we think or you think should represent us in Congress, and we're all listening.
And we encourage, I guess I encourage, and maybe you'll share in your encouragement, that people who have great knowledge and insight and abilities, put it to use now. Consider running. COVID, let's end it there.
All right.
Any suggestions?
Get vaccinated.
All right.
Get vaccinated. We have the beginning of the school year right now, and let's keep our schools open. And the best way to do that is get vaccinated.
And do everything else that the scientists are telling us to do.
That's right.
Social distancing, masks, and we hope the kids can be in all year this year.
That's right. Live.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.